Hello, people! Drum Education Live number 32. And today we have the amazing Emanuele Marchetti, drummer from Italy, living in London. A good, very good friend of mine, very good drummer. Actually, not a very good drummer. He's an amazing drummer
Thank
and
you.
great teacher and everything. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Welcome to Drum Education Live.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. And it's such a big pleasure for just to be part of this roundtable. And actually, what you guys doing with Drum Education Live is very inspiring, and it's such an honor for me to be here. So thanks for having me.
Let's kick things off with Kira and her question. Kira, your question.
Well, firstly, great to meet you. And
Nice to meet you.
we would like to know, what do you think is missing from drum education today, if anything?
Okay, well, it's a good question. What is missing from drum education? I think a specific learning path. That's what I will say. What I mean by that is that nowadays there's a lot of knowledge accessible to anybody, but you can take bits here and there from different people, different approaches. Whereas, like for me, like a more not I wouldn't call it academic approach, but more like a structured learning path is something that I've seen missing quite a lot, at least in my experience. So this is my thought on regard.
Yeah, do you have anything else?
Well, actually, yeah, I wanted to just dig in on that a little bit then.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Do you mean like it's very hit and miss, perhaps?
Well, let me think. When it comes for education, nowadays, I mean, like I had a particular learning process. Okay, so I started more on studying styles of music rather than specific technique. And I found out later on in the years when I moved to the UK and I started studying with Gabor Donier. Actually, I started privately with him for 4.5 years. It really kicked my butt when it comes for technique and all the kind of stuff. So I found myself struggling a little bit with certain things. So if I had started like approaching to techniques and more like detailed stuff from the very beginning, I probably wouldn't have struggled. So this is my thought, just giving the student all the solid foundation since day one, and you can start build up from there. So you can build up a proper learning path tailored to any single individual, but yet with a sort of like a program where you touch technique, styles in music, reading, rudiments, music theory. I'll tell you the story, I mean, like very briefly, but I've been lucky enough when I started playing the drums. Drums is not my first instrument. So I'm classical trained. I studied violin and piano. So the violin and piano have been my first two instruments back in the days. My dad is a professional musician. So it literally pushed me into music education since like very early age. And so I studied that. That gave me the foundation. So I could read the seven clefs. I could read chord progressions and everything. And then when I got back into music later on in the years, and I started playing the drums as a self-taught for the first year, actually I found that once I learned how to read a drum tab, for me it just was like very easy to read a drum chart, because I had the knowledge before, and that helped me a lot. So so some young students like don't know how to read. I mean, I don't say it's really essential, but if you wanna pursue like a professional career, it's something that needs to be done in my opinion. So once I got into the lessons with Gabor and all the great teachers I had the pleasure to study with, they literally they just flipped my technique like upside down, literally. So I wish I had done that before, so I could have been more prepared in somehow.
But I guess that also has to do with the fact that you were self-taught because
Mm.
you didn't know how to start.
True.
Yeah, and I wanted my question is how do you switch from the piano and the violin to drums?
That's a great question. Well, simply for a reason, it was more my father's vision than mine. So my dad is classical trained as well. He plays flute and saxophone, and his dream was to see me graduated in violin. And because he thinks that violin is great to develop the perfect pitch. That's what he thought. That's what he still thinks nowadays. But when I started studying music, I was 6, and obviously when you're 6 years old, you have no idea what you're going to do, right? Just you take it for fun, and that's all good. But like I've done that for 11 and a half years, and the more I've done that, and the more I started realizing that that wasn't my thing. It was my father thing, not mine. So I kind of like, I took a break. I quit music when I was 17 and a half. And I got into another completely different thing. I got into hip hop. So I've been involved into hip hop culture for 17 and a half years, breakdancing, DJing. And that's when I started DJing. So when I started collecting records, I started really, literally feeling in love with drum breaks, percussion breaks, and all that kind of stuff. That's all I was researching for when I was looking at records. And so I got so fascinated by the rhythm, by the groove, by the drums that at a certain point, you know, I just switched to that, and the rest is history.
Can you rap?
No,
Okay,
at all.
just
Oh, but I think that is so interesting that you discovered drums through like hip hop culture, DJing. I love that. I just think that's how cool. How cool. And I guess my question would be, once you discovered drums, did the instrument turn you on to other genres or artists that you hadn't really given a time of day to before?
Well, that happened throughout my years of studying, of course. When I started at first, I was in love with funk. And whereas like the majority of drummers, they all start from rock, I started the other way around. I started from funk, because that was the primary style that I was listening to when I was a DJ. Not only that, I was listening to many different styles of music, from Latin music to Brazilian music, jazz funk, funk rock, fusion, and obviously that was my main thing, I will say. But when I got into private tuition with my former teacher at that time, he started introducing me to different styles of music. And obviously I started like approaching to from funk to blues, shuffle, swing. I studied jazz for a couple of years, so I've learned the basics. My former teacher wanted me to be well-rounded, and in fact we just focus more on the styles of music rather than technique itself. And now I reconnect with my, you know, my struggle with technique and everything. So I've done more like technical studies by myself, but I've been followed when it comes for like the music side. So like all the genres. So I was reading the drum charts. I was reading the jazz standards, the classical AABA structure and everything. So I got used to that because obviously my teacher wanted me to be ready to get out and play in any situation, in any given situation. So yeah, I definitely got introduced to new artists, new challenges as well. Because obviously, when I studying with funk and then studying for a couple of years jazz, and then I joined a rock band, That was a bit of a challenge, just changing the sound and the touch and everything. And I was crazy with traditional grape at the time, so I was playing primarily traditional grape, and yeah, has been a bit of a challenge. But just over time, when I started then getting more professional gigs and everything, I become more well-rounded, more adaptable to the situation.
Cool. Uh, if I know nothing of funk, what
Mm.
would be the album that you would recommend me to listen to?
Ouch. There are so many. um, well, give me two
But
artists.
yeah,
Give me two artists.
but that's the thing, For
Well,
example, it's
James
it's your
Brown.
it's your
James Brown.
yeah, it's
Ja-
your choice because, for example, obviously in jazz there are many different albums. But if a student come to me and say, "I know nothing about jazz, which
right.
album should I start with?" I would say Miles Davis' "Kind of Blue."
Yeah. Well, I will say all the James Brown records.
Okay.
Because yeah, there's I mean, like from Melvin Parker to Clyde and Jabbo, and then Melvin Parker again when Clyde and Jabbo quit the band. Um, they just like they brought the funk. They invented it. They created the funk. They literally like revolutionized the syncopated funk. So yeah, just listen to the James Brown anthology, and you have a great foundation for the rest of the artists and funk players around. But yeah, definitely James Brown,
Cool.
no
Nice.
doubt.
So the James Brown anthology. I'm gonna buy that one.
Absolutely.
I'd like to know a little bit more about moving to the UK
Yep.
and what what made you make the big move?
Actually, she's
And
asking why.
why? Why would you come here?
Well, that's what I ask myself when I think about my country and the good weather during the
Yeah.
summertime and everything, and I
And
think about
food. Hello.
and yeah, I think about like rainy days, like days one, and all the stuff. Yeah, it's been it has been well. I mean, I did it for the love of music. That's it. Um, um, Honestly, when I got into drums, I was going through a very bad period in my life, and and honestly, breaking and DJing weren't enough anymore to fill in that gap. So when I got into drums, I don't know, that was like love at the first sight. And for me, since the very first day I started taking lessons with my former teacher, and I sat down behind an acoustic kit, I was so in love with that. Then I told myself I have to become a professional musician. That's it, and something I felt inside ever since. And so obviously coming from a very small town back in Italy, um, like there were not so many opportunities around. Okay, so the scene is very small, and then there's so many bands for a very tiny amount of venues and everything. So there's a lot of competition, but also no opportunities as well. And I don't know. Honestly, I wanted to move to New York. That was my first destination.
But he only had money to come only to London. Till New York, it was a little bit more expensive, so he couldn't
Exactly.
make it.
And the visa problems as well.
Oh, I'm so
So well, the reason has been simply having the chance to study at the ISMP. So I've done the audition, and I got a place for the higher diploma, and that was it. That was the reason that brought me to quit my job, quit my old life, move to London, stop my studies with the intention of like pursuing music as a career. So yeah, that's the reason. Just
so
music
cool.
and a musical career.
I think the reason's not that. I think his father disowned him because his father is a classical musician who plays the flute and the saxophone, and the son wants to be a drummer. So the father said, "You're out of here. You're
Get out.
Well, I mean, like that's a funny story because obviously when I quit music the first time, my dad was just a little bit disappointed with me. Yeah, without saying I was really disappointed, but when I told him that I wanted to somehow just get back into music, he bought me my first drum kit. So my first cheap electronic drum kit, I don't even remember the make, or yeah, I just remember it was like a cheap drum kit, but it was a drum kit. So and my dad bought it for me, and so because like yeah, you like the idea of me just going back to study music and eventually even like pursuing a different instrument, a different career, and everything. You accept that over time. So yeah, so it's all good with my dad now. So,
That's what parents do. They have to accept it.
yeah, absolutely.
Such a little seal of approval, though, isn't it? With
Yeah.
buying your first kit. So that's sweet. You know, it's nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit like it wasn't really convinced about me moving to the UK. It was like, why don't you start like starting the conservatoire here in Italy, blah blah blah, and everything. I'm like, not really. You know, I just wanted to trying to like step up on my learning process. I just needed to, when you get to the point where you feel like you hit the ceiling and you don't go any further. That was the the game changer for me to sit down and think, right, I need something more than this, because this doesn't fulfill me anymore. And I love learning. This is my approach, and I love learning new stuff, new skills, anytime. So when I don't see any progress at some point, I just figure out other ways to make it happen. So and and then in the end I realized that yeah, in somehow like music education is quite different here in the UK than Italy. I mean, we have great teachers, we have great musicians, but sometimes is being more classical oriented in my opinion. And like for instance, there's no. I mean, now there are several private music schools that teach pop music, that teach pop, jazz, fusion, whatever style of music. But back in the days, if you wanted to get a degree at the conservatoire, you had to study percussion, classical percussion, and that was a 10 years long course. So and then the jazz course, and then the conservatoire has become more of a like undergraduate course. So you have 3 years plus two, and but you have jazz drumming, stuff like that. Which nothing against jazz, I like it. I can play a little bit, but I just wanted to have a more like a different view of the drums.
Cool.
So,
Now, changing subjects a little, let me ask you one thing, Kieran. Do you have your own signature snare drum?
me?
No.
No, Kira. I'm asking Kira.
Oh,
Do you?
No.
Kieran.
No, I don't. No. I made
Well,
my snare drums, but I know someone who
yeah,
does.
but Emmanuel, he has his own signature snare drum. Could you talk a
Uh,
little bit about that, please, sir?
Can we have a
oh,
little look? Because look
yeah,
at it. It looks amazing. Look at that.
yeah,
Is that like neon yellow or what?
yeah, kind of. You are. This
Oh,
is
nice,
the.
sir.
Hang on. This way. Yeah.
See
Yeah.
the
So
signature
basically,
there?
yeah. Over. There you go. Cheese. Yeah. Well. I've been really honored to become like a part of the Sempiternus family back in Italy. I wanna say thanks to Sergio Giovagnola for building this for me and for believing in my skills and my capabilities. And I could never believe that one day, I had the chance to play my own signatures now. I mean, I always played the signatures of other great drummers, and finally have my own signature, which is great.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna sign I'm gonna sign the shell of mine snare drum. I'm gonna call it signature.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically there's a little bit of a sad story behind, unfortunately, because I mean, like if you look at the color, it's a black shell, it's a black maple shell, 4 millimeters, um, and so it's black shell, which is my favorite color, and the yellow, it was my best mate favorite color. Well, unfortunately, he passed away in 2012,
Wow.
and yeah, and for me, it's been such a big loss that when when Sempiternus Drums actually approached me and we talk about like a possible partnership, um, he said to me like, right, cool, I want to customize your snare. Like we were talking about a signature, yeah. So we started with the idea of like a fully customized snare. But when I told him about the story and I wanted to dedicate this snare to my best friend, um, he really loved the idea, and he said, "Listen, you know what? I like you playing. I like you. You're a great person. I like you playing. I like your professional attitude. I just want to make a scene that is there for you." I'm like, well, and yeah, I mean, a dream come true, you know.
Cool.
And
So what are the sizes?
so this is a 14 by 6.5 maple shell. So it's basically one ply. It's a single ply, 4 millimeters of North American maple, with reinforcement rings. And now the spec. I mean, unfortunately, you can't see from the bottom head, but the great spec of this snare is basically they have like some wooden bricks inside the shell that goes from the top to the bottom ring. And with this system, there's no loss of vibration of the note from the top head to the bottom head. And this system makes these snares so sensitive to any possible ghost notes. And it's also very versatile. I mean, like you can tune up and down. Probably, yeah, maybe for funk, it needs like of a little bit of a, you need to crank it up a little bit in the tuning. But I mean, I use this live studio, and yeah, couldn't be happier.
Cool.
It's lovely.
Put it back.
I wanted to
So-
ask you a little bit about when you were studying with Gabor. Like,
Yeah.
did you seek him out for technique in particular, or what was it about him that you thought?
Mainly technique, I would say, and because, as I say, you know, I haven't done that much technique before, and I wanted to get more in depth into certain things because I just realized that I was struggling in my playing with certain things. Obviously, when uh, was into traditional grip, nobody really taught me how to play traditional grip. So kind of like my former teacher was more match grip based, and I was so in love with the traditional that I started developing traditional grip by myself. Then to the point that when I switched back to the match grip, I was struggling with the match grip. You know, just it's just another feel, basically.
But question is, did you switch because you wanted or because Gabor said to you, let's go back to the match?
No,
grip?
actually, Gabor asked me, what do you prefer, traditional grip or match grip? And I said straight away, traditional grip, because I was still into that a lot. But I don't know, it was just a natural switch, because he forced me to use the match grip as well. So we worked on both. I'm now pretty much 95% match grip player. But when I practice, I still practice my traditional grip all the time. So I just switch between the two and trying to keep them, you know, keep both of them fresh. And so yeah, hands technique, feet technique as well. That was something that I was lacking, particularly in certain things like samba, like the typical tum chaka tum chaka tum, to the typical bass drum and a hi hat pattern of the samba. because my former teacher studied in Brazil for a long time, he had such a great preparation in that kind of field, and I realized how much I struggled at first, just to put together the limbs and everything, and that was just a lack of technique. So literally for the first year, we work on a lot of pads, stuff, hands and feet with Gabor, also like styles and phrasings, but technique for the majority, I would say.
Did
And
he use
that helped me a lot, actually.
Did he use any specific books for the technique lessons?
Not really, not really. He uses his own style of teaching. It doesn't refer to a specific book, but we've done a lot of Jojo Meyer exercises. He used to refer to these kind of exercises rather than to the specific book. In fact, rediscovering, I would say, because obviously I started studying in methods and books as well. Whereas when I moved to London, I kind of I lost that approach a little bit. So, and then I realized that I have so many books in here, which I just took maybe 2 or 3 pages that I studied, and I just want to come back and take in like a single book and try to go through from the top to the bottom. Unfortunately, the lack of time. Maybe now that we're in a lockdown, a bit more time. But before COVID, actually, I was thankfully busy enough, and I was playing a lot, and that really helped my playing. But I wanted to practice, so now it's the other way around.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm I definitely recommend, as a teacher, I definitely recommend books for sure.
You don't need to tell Felipe over here with his crazy collection, right?
Yeah, I will not talk about that because I scare people with the amount of books I have.
Well, actually, I got these from you, Philippe, as well. So this is a great
Oh,
thing.
it's my fault now. All right.
No, in a good way, in a positive way, of course. But no, I mean, I started literally collecting books, and I actually have some here with me that I would like to recommend. Actually, just as a sort of a little part of my learning process. But my very first book, and wow, it's the very first one I bought, is the first Dante Agostini, and this is the very first one. This has been my first book where I studied.
Oh.
And this is great.
I think I have a copy of that in somewhere in my studio.
Yeah, my very first book. You are. And I mean, you have everything you need of here. Reading, grooves, what else? Yeah, some grooves, proper like drum solo grooves at the end of the book. And it's great. I'm still using it nowadays, and even the reading section is quite challenging as well. You have a lot of 16 notes, 30-second notes, 16-note triplets. I mean, it's a complete book. I mean, I think if you take these as a first book and you go through from the top to the bottom, you have a very solid foundation for sure. Mm. And one book that this has been my second, and I think is a bit underrated, but this has been the responsible for my playing pretty much throughout those years, is the Breakbeat Bible.
Oh.
By Mike Adamo. Now, I call it underrated because, yeah, you don't see this book around a lot.
No, you don't.
And basically, the great spec of this book, if you're into groove, so if you want to learn how to groove properly, you have all the best grooves, best funk grooves, and hip hop grooves transcribed, and you have exercises on how to develop over 16 notes, and how to learn the different rebounds when you have a ghosted note followed by an accent. So you have the concept, the accent and rebound concept. And yeah, it's all kicks in their head. No drum fills, nothing. Just purely a groove book. So whoever wants to approach to groove studies, this is the book. And yeah, then all the classics, all the obviously state control.
I've heard of this one.
Yeah, of syncopation.
Yeah, I've heard of that one as well.
I actually developed like I've done just few videos about the application of the stick control stickings to funk drumming.
Oh,
So
cool.
just taking for the majority of the time the first page 5 and the first 12 sticking of the left column as just taking a funk groove and applying those stickings to the funk grooves and on different orchestrations around the kit. And I found out that wow, it's just endless source of inspiration. So like sometimes you need less to make the most out of your practice. So
There's one thing I've heard from Steve Smith years ago, which I think if ever Drum Education Live decides to interview myself, it's and ask me what's missing in music education is what I've heard from Steve Smith is when he started playing drums in the early 60s, basically there were only three books: syncopation, stick control, and the Jim Chapin Independence book.
advanced techniques for modern
Yeah,
drumming.
exactly. And the teachers had to teach everything about drums with only those three books. And that's why we today have this concept of taking the first page of stick control and creating as much as we can, taking the famous page 38 of syncopation and create as much as we can. Because back in the day, the teachers only had these three books and the whole world of drumming to teach people. So it's very important to go beyond the page. The page proposes an exercise, but not let's not go like horses and do these exercise over and over again. Have a doctor's degree in exercise 5 and page 37, but not knowing what to do with them. You know.
Now that's great. I mean, I
Mm.
think sometimes we just limit ourselves doing what's written on a page, and we don't dig deeper. That's it. And I found out this way of like approach to practice like quite lately actually. Not really. It's something I discovered in the last few years. That I was when I was here and not knowing what to practice because there's so many things around to practice to and also an important thing I think that these specific kind of practice helped me out developing my own sound. Now I'm still researching my own sound, still researching my own style. I don't tend to watch many YouTube videos and trying to take a lick and copy it. And I don't like that approach. Never done it. Well, we all did that at some point. I've done that at the very beginning as well. But you know, sometimes I'm just limiting myself, to certain fields because I'm like, okay, cool, those are my chops. What can I do just to
But
add more words, more vocabulary?
but the thing which I think the breakbeat Bible, it's very important, is as you said, there's no fills. It's all about the groove. And doesn't matter how many fills you can pull out in a song. If the groove's not there, you're not gonna work. I'm really sorry.
Mm.
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. Less is more, and I quote the great Bernard Purdy for that.
Yeah.
Just less is more, and I mean, like I can feel, I can be the first person in the bandstand if I will play something that doesn't fit. I will spot it right
Mm.
away, just on the spot. I'm like, why did I play that? I don't know. Just I feel like obviously my former teacher gave me a lot of knowledge about simplistic playing, and he has this vision just to be essential and play what you need. You don't need to overplay or, you know, to show off. I mean, there's nothing really to show off. I mean, from my personal experience, I found myself getting more work playing the groove, playing the song, not stepping into other musician styles, and just make sure that you're in a conversation and you have an interplay. That's what music is. So there must be a balance, because I mean, playing the chops is great. You know, makes it good fun, but you know, it's good to have a little bit of both. So in case you have a little bit of a spotlight moment where you can a little bit, you know, you can mess around a little bit, so you can do that. But you know, when you have to get back in track, you're there.
That's it. I think that's a really good point. Because I don't know if you've ever tried to learn like a chop from, I don't know, say for example, Drum University on Instagram or whatever, and they've got, hey, here it is, it's written out, here's what he's playing or she. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, but it does not sound natural. You know, it's not natural from your being as a drummer. And I think you've touched on a really good point. You need to sound authentic as you. And I think you don't need to worry. Find your inspiration, and then I think the rest will just follow, and then you'll just come up with your own chops that sound like you anyway, and will be appropriate in the moment, you know? It's something that is such a good point.
And that's how the greats became the greats, because they were themselves. They weren't trying to learn someone else's chops, you know. They learned the technique, and then what they do with the technique, it's their own thing.
Yeah. Also the execution. One interesting thing that Gabor told me all the time is to play with clarity. Now, obviously, we all want to try to pull out the best 30-second note lick that we can possibly pull out, right? But I just realized over like by the time being that it was sounding like sloppy. It was sounding like a drum kit falling down the stairs, you know, and that's not really what you want from like a feel. So Gabor told me, remember, play with clarity. If you have great chops, if you can play those chops with clarity, it will sound twice much better. So that's, you know, quality over quantity. So sometimes repeating yourself, which there's nothing bad with it. Actually, Benny Grabs says that all the time. You can repeat yourself when you're soloing. That's a form of expression. There's nothing bad on that. And but make sure that those fills are spot on. So they're clear, nice and clean, on time, and then that's it. That's all you need of.
Cool. Kira, last question. We're running out of time now.
Oh man, I've got a few. Okay. What would you tell your younger self?
To my younger self? Wow. Don't start studying violin. At all.
That must have a positive.
I know that
somewhere.
Yeah, no, I mean that I said that as a joke a little bit. I mean, if my dad is watching the interview now, he will be disappointed. But
he's already disappointed. You're a drummer, so he's already disappointed. Don't worry.
You're absolutely right.
That doesn't get any worse than that.
Yeah, maybe I would, I would change instrument. You know, just like at a very early age, start doing stuff. You know, start studying the stuff that I wanted to study back then. But also, I mean, yeah, that's probably what I would have said. And just don't waste my time across like nonsense things, or like things that I've done. I'm like, why did I do that? So
I
why?
like this concept that instead of telling your younger self, don't waste your time, you're gonna tell your younger self, don't waste my time.
You're right. Um, yeah, yeah. Basically, that's what I would say. I would study drums, maybe, or maybe not. I always see that this path has been lined up already. So I wouldn't change things, that much, because once you have the understanding of what you want to do, it's, believe me, I mean, you can. There's no age limit for that. It's never too late to do something. So once you have the awareness of what you are, who you are, and what you want to do, that's it.
Cool.
Cool. That's very powerful to end up with. I think we've it's a great ending to the interview.
Yay.
It is. All right, boss. Thank you very much for your time. It was
Th-
really good.
Thank
I
you very
had
much
fun.
for having me, guys.